Yo, hold up. What went down on SportsCenter's Emergency Raiders coverage this afternoon is going to make your blood pressure spike if you bleed silver and black. And I'm not being dramatic when I say the next 72 hours could literally define whether this season spirals into complete organizational chaos or somehow, someway, finds a path forward. We're talking Colton Miller's injury being way worse than originally reported, Stone Forsythe potentially starting at left tackle, which has me legitimately terrified, a Tariq Woolen trade scenario that actually makes strategic sense, and coaching decisions that have me questioning whether Pete Carroll and this staff actually understand their own roster. Buckle up, because this is going to be a deep dive into the darkness. Hey Raiders fans! If you're following along with this analysis, I have a dream: to hit 1,000 subscribers on this channel. It would be incredible to have you on this journey with me. Go ahead and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's grow together. Your subscription means the world to me and the future of this channel. Now, let's keep going because there's still so much more to discuss. So I'm watching SportsCenter right as they're cutting to Ian Rappaport with breaking news, and when Rapp starts talking about Colton Miller not just having a high ankle sprain, but also a hairline fracture, I literally had to pause because the implications are so catastrophic that I don't think casual fans understand we might be looking at Miller being done for the season. Not week to week, not month to month, potentially done. Think about what that means for a second. You just went from having arguably the best left tackle in the NFL through 4 games to rolling out whatever patchwork solution this coaching staff cobbles together. And based on their decision-making with the offensive line so far this season, I have zero confidence they're going to make the right call. Here's what had Stephen A. Smith absolutely losing his mind during the segment. And when Stephen A. gets this animated about offensive line philosophy, you know there's legitimate organizational dysfunction happening. Pete Carroll came out and said Stone Forsythe will likely be the first choice at left tackle, with Charles Grant getting an opportunity to compete for it. Let me repeat that. Stone Forsythe, a career backup who's been below average at right tackle his entire NFL existence, is now going to protect Geno Smith's blind side. The SportsCenter panel pulled up Forsythe's PFF grade, and they are absolutely horrifying. 43.1 overall grade on 414 snaps this season, 41.3 pass blocking grade, 2 sacks allowed, 4 hits, 35 pressures. These aren't just bad numbers, these are, you're actively getting your quarterback killed numbers. But here's where the analysis got really damning, and this is something Kendrick Perkins was hammering home throughout the segment. Forsythe has played 78% of his career snaps at right tackle, only 21% at left tackle. You're asking a guy who's struggled mightily at a position he's actually familiar with to now flip sides and play the most important position on the offensive line. That's not just bad coaching, that's organizational malpractice when you have Charles Grant, a third-round pick from 2025, who was specifically drafted to potentially be Colton Miller's long-term replacement, sitting right there available. The coaching favoritism discussion became absolutely explosive during the first take coverage, and this is where you could see the entire panel getting genuinely frustrated with what they're witnessing from Pete Carroll's decision-making. Max Kellerman made this comparison to the Jackson Powers-Johnson situation that was absolutely perfect. Why does JPJ have to compete with Jordan Meredith and Alex Kappa to prove he's the best interior lineman when he's clearly superior to both? But Stone Forsythe just automatically gets handed the left tackle job because he's a Pete Carroll guy? Why does Geno Smith not have to compete for his job when he's thrown 7 interceptions through 4 games? But JPJ had to earn every snap despite being the team's best draft pick in years. This isn't just about roster construction anymore. This is about organizational philosophy and whether Pete Carroll is making decisions based on what's best for the Raiders or what's best for Pete Carroll's guys. Stephen A. was making this comparison to Josh McDaniels' tenure, saying he's starting to see similar patterns of favoritism and stubbornness that ultimately destroyed that regime, and honestly, I can't argue with the parallel. When you start seeing a coach consistently choose loyalty over meritocracy, that's when championship aspirations die. Then the trade discussion shifted to Tariq Woolen, and this is where the segment actually offered some hope amidst all the despair. The SportsCenter crew brought on their Seahawks insider to break down why this trade makes sense for both sides, and the framework is actually pretty compelling when you dig into the detail. Woolen is in a contract year, Seattle doesn't want to pay him, he's fallen out of favor with the new coaching staff, and his best 2 seasons were under Pete Carroll. Meanwhile, the Raiders are absolutely desperate for cornerback depth, with Eric Stokes' injury status uncertain and the rest of the room looking completely overmatched. Richard Jefferson broke down Woolen's 2022 rookie season numbers: 16 pass breakups, 6 interceptions, teams were testing him, and he was making them pay. That's the kind of impact cornerback play the Raiders haven't had consistently since, honestly, I can't even remember. The panel was showing film of Woolen's athleticism and physical traits, and he fits that Pete Carroll prototype perfectly. 6'4", 210 pounds, absolute athletic freak who can match up with bigger receivers. His 2023 numbers were still solid, with 53 tackles, 2 picks, 11 pass breakups, but the last 2 seasons in Seattle without Carroll, he's completely fallen off, currently grading out at a brutal 40.4 overall PFF grade. But here's the strategic genius that the First Take panel was emphasizing. This is the definition of a buy low opportunity. Woolen's value has cratered because he's playing poorly in a system that doesn't fit his skill set, under coaches who don't know how to maximize his talents. Seattle is motivated to move him before he potentially gets benched for Trey Brown or Rick Witherspoon, which would tank his trade value even further. The Raiders can swoop in, offer a 5th-round pick, literally what Seattle originally spent on him in 2022, and potentially revitalize a career while addressing their most glaring defensive need. The financial mechanics became another selling point during the segment, and this is where front office strategy gets really interesting. The Raiders have an extra 5th-round compensatory pick, so even if they trade their regular 5th for Woolen, they're not actually depleting draft capital in any meaningful way. Plus, if Woolen plays well and walks in free agency, they'll likely recoup another comp pick anyway. It's essentially risk-free asset management, while addressing an immediate roster need with a player your head coach has a proven track record of developing. But then we got back to the offensive line disaster, and this is where my genuine terror about this season kicks in. The SportsCenter panel was projecting what the Raiders' protection schemes are going to look like with Forsythe at left tackle, and it's genuinely nightmarish. You're asking Geno Smith, who's already struggling with accuracy and decision-making, to operate behind a left tackle who's going to give up pressure on nearly 40% of his pass-blocking snaps based on his career averages. That's not a recipe for improvement. That's a recipe for Geno completely imploding. Stephen A. made this point that really stuck with me. If you're Pete Carroll, and you're supposedly a quarterback whisperer who believes in competition and meritocracy, why are you setting up your quarterback for failure by surrounding him with inferior offensive line talent when you have better options sitting right there? Charles Grant might take his lumps as a rookie, but at least you're developing a potential long-term solution while evaluating what you have. Forsythe is what he is, a below-average backup who's now being thrust into a starting role he's not qualified for. The Geno Smith regression analysis became another major focus, and the statistics are absolutely damning when you see them laid out comprehensively. The panel showed that Smith went from being a top 5 quarterback in accuracy over the past 3 seasons to 31st in the NFL in catchable throw percentage this year. His turnover-worthy throw rate is 34th in the NFL. His pressure-to-sack rate is 27th. His adjusted net yards per attempt is 27th. These aren't just bad numbers. These are bottom 5 in the league at every meaningful metric number. Max was making this argument about the Chip Kelly offense that I thought was really insightful. The system was supposed to create easy throws, quick decisions, and explosive plays through scheme and pace. But defenses have figured out that if you sit in too high safety looks and force the Raiders to take what's underneath, Geno starts trying to force balls downfield anyway because he's either stubborn, impatient, or genuinely can't see the checkdowns. The result is turnover after turnover in situations where taking the 5-yard gain would have kept drives alive. The Brock Bowers injury impact got significant attention too, and this is something that's flying under the radar, but absolutely matters for offensive functionality. Bowers is clearly not 100% healthy. You can see it in his movement, in his ability to separate vertically, in how the Raiders are deploying him. When your most dynamic offensive weapon is compromised, it creates a cascading effect, where suddenly defenses can bracket everyone else, because that one guy who scared them most isn't the same threat. Here's what really emerged from the entire SportsCenter coverage that I think encapsulates where the Raiders are right now. This is a franchise at war with itself. You've got a coaching staff making decisions based on loyalty rather than merit. You've got a quarterback regressing in ways that suggest either the system doesn't fit or he's completely lost confidence. You've got an offensive line that was already struggling and just lost its best player for potentially the entire season. You've got defensive depth issues at cornerback that are one injury away from complete catastrophe. And you've got a front office that seems paralyzed about whether to double down on this roster construction or start planning for next year. That's what went down on SportsCenter this afternoon, and honestly, if you're a Raiders fan, the next month is going to determine whether this team salvages anything from 2025 or whether we're already looking ahead to 2026 draft position. The Colton Miller injury might be the final straw that breaks everything. Or it might force this coaching staff to finally make merit-based decisions that actually improve the roster. Either way, buckle up. It's going to be a brutal ride.